WWE and NXT. And on this show, actually what happens behind the scenes when it comes to wrestling and some really neat stories and really deep diving into things. And it's going to be a little bit of a different show than what you normally hear
from the crowd.
And it's always kind of been the trajectory of our entire careers. You know what I mean? It's never been necessarily the in-ring that's going to blow people away when it comes to us. Like, are we very good at what we do? Absolutely. Promos are what made us stand out. When we had our time in Chikara or on any of the indies, it was always get in front of the camera and talk.
So we were like, let's create a show where we don't rely on having a match or a segment or whatever, where we just talk every single week.
You're the real Sting?
It's under debate.
Under debate.
Was it the real Sting?
I don't know.
Unconfirmed.
Back to working on Wednesday nights.
I want a piece. We want a piece. Dumped on my head by Dollar Bill. You know what I mean?
Dollar
was it Dollar Bill? What's
the
his
Dollar
name?
King.
Dollar King.
The Dollar King.
What's his real name?
Top Dollar.
You know? And then now we work for the other guys.
Yeah.
You know, it's insane. What is happening?
I'm not sure that there has ever been a debut of two guys who were in NXT, another promotion, who got such raving reviews, a pop, a Twitter. You were trending all over Twitter for 2 days. Like, I have not seen that. I don't think I've ever seen that.
We could chop down the big redwood. No problem. Yeah.
When Darby's music hits, and then as he came out, him and Sting come out, and there's this pop, and I felt alive again for the first time in like 2 years, and I mean that in every form possible. Like, this electricity went through me, and I was like, "This is what it's supposed to feel
This is
like."
what we've been missing. Like, you feel alive. Woo,
man!
Getting turned on over here.
So nice.
Pace boys, step right up, no problem.
I ended up teaming with a guy named Novocaine. And the thing was, I started as a referee, and I was this crooked referee, and then so he would take me and train me as a wrestler. So our team name was Under Construction. Then as a tag team, we had a crooked ref.
That was me.
So eventually, he does the big schmoz for us, and we become a group, which Novocaine becomes the singles competitor, and we become the tag team known as Under Construction 2.0. Mm-hmm. Then the inevitable heel turn happens. So Under Construction is done.
Yeah, we ditched Novocaine. See you later.
No more Under Construction. We just
dropped it.
2.0.
We're just 2.0. That's where 2.0 came from.
And now we're back to 2.0.
We're back to 2.0.
It's one of those things. It feels like it's the proverbial thing that you always hear of, like, here's the ball. Dude, let's see if you can run. Like you gotta run.
It takes balls to do that with two new guys in your company, to put that trust in them.
Yep.
To go out on national television in prime time against three of your top guys.
Yeah.
You know, it takes balls to do that. Yeah. And not everybody's willing to do it, but they did.
Certainly debate with us.
Sure.
Like, can we entertain? Sure, but can you go?
Yeah.
You have to see.
How are you going to be received in this moment? You know?
Yeah. There's a lot of variables that could make you go wrong. So it
was a good night.
We got a problem with you. You're gonna get it. You will if you're a friend of the show. Then you'll know this for sure. The show must go on. The show must go on. The show must go on. The show must.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Behind the Show on YouTube. My name is Aaron Amadeus, joined with
All right.
Here we go. The show.
We are live.
Matt Lee and Jeff Parker.
Thursday
how you guys
night.
doing?
Thursday night.
Great time.
Thursday.
The show.
Live in Pittsburgh.
2.0. Yeah, hotel room. He's got the shirt in the back there. ProWrestlingTees.com. You want to take a swing with me? No problem.
Set decoration.
Yeah, it looks amazing. You guys had a great night last night on Dynamite on TNT and in Canada on TSN.
Yeah,
it was a great show, and I cannot wait for next week's Dynamite because I just read that there's a tornado tag match and
a little Texas tornado tag in Houston. Right? Getting a piece of that Darby and Stinger ass. How about that?
Stinger.
Yeah, no problem.
We are gonna have
what is going on in life?
Who knows?
What is happening?
Who knows?
We got a great show. I mean, I don't want to hold this in a little bit longer, but first of all, hit the subscribe button, share this show right now, and email us if you want to get on the show, theshowrules@gmail.com, because not only can you talk to the famous Tag Team 2.0, but you can talk to, I think, one of the most intriguing guests that we've ever thought about having on the show. I think it's going to be a wonderful interview, and I know we've been really excited about it.
I can't believe it's actually happening, Aaron.
Yeah.
You made it happen. I can't believe it. I doubted all day. I'm like, Dave, he's not coming. But Dave is here.
Yes. So without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, the founder of the Wrestling Observer. Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming to the show rules and behind the show, Mr. Dave Meltzer.
All right.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Welcome, Dave. How are you, my man?
Yeah.
Oh man, this is like so abnormal.
Right? Well, what are we doing? Breaking all the rules.
Yeah, so it's cool. Yeah. And I can't believe it's like 6 days before, like, probably the biggest match of your lives, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean,
Yeah.
Never wrestled Sting before.
No, can't say that I have.
About a year ago. Like, did you ever think this would be the case? Right? Talking to Dave Meltzer.
This would be the case 3 weeks ago.
No, 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
I mean, like a month or whatever it was ago, I would watch you guys on NXT, and I never thought like wrestling Sting. I never really thought we would ever see Sting in a television match again. That's how crazy this whole thing is.
So it's the first time he's going to wrestle on TNT in since the final Nitro.
Right, since Ric Flair 2001. So in 20 years. First time, over 20 years, and first time in any TV since whenever he left TNA. I mean, he's done a few pay-per-view matches with WWE and AEW, but for a TV match, and it's with you guys, and it's a tornado match, so it's got to be like total action.
Hey, it's going to be a good time. I promise that.
Oh, yeah.
I promise that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, do you think they're gonna sneak Jeff Farmer in on you or what?
Don't tease me. Don't tease me.
We still got
we still don't know who it is.
We still got our suspicions. Might not be the real Sting.
Hey, before we continue on, I know there's some news that came out with Brian Knobs that we just want to make sure that if anybody has a chance, we'll post a link. And if someone has a chance to post a link, there's a GoFundMe out there right now. He's going through some issues in the hospital. So if anybody has any spare a couple of bucks to make some donations, and we hope he gets well and healthy soon. I know he actually tweeted out to you guys the other day.
Yeah, I saw those the vests. I guess little tip of the cap.
Tip of the cap to Pity City.
Yeah.
All the best to Brian Knobs, and if anybody can help out, please do. Beautiful community in wrestling, and you watch these guys growing up, and it's sometimes the least we could all do. So
yeah.
So Dave, I think it'd be a really cool intro to talk about the fact that we all come from Montreal originally. We all came from a wrestling community, Matt, Jeff, and myself, growing up as kids. And, we used to talk about the Wrestling Observer, and it was one of those things where like, okay, what's going on? What's the dirt sheet? What's happening now? And so before you came on, we were talking about like, how did that start? Right. So, I mean, I want to get the history of the Wrestling Observer, Dave Meltzer as a wrestling fan, and how it all started.
Wow, that's a tough question.
Right.
I mean, I when I was a young kid, when I started reading wrestling magazines, you could sort of read it, and it's kind of like it never had the information that I wanted, and so, but they used to have these fan club columns, and so they would have the newsletters. So I started subscribing to a couple of newsletters. One was by Mike Tenay, who ended up being one of my best friends. So he started like in '66 writing a newsletter. And so I saw that, and then there was another one by a guy named Ron Dobrat. So in 71, 72, I said, like, yeah, I'll do a newsletter on California wrestling. So I started in doing that, and then in the 80s, when I was in college, I revived it as like the Wrestling Observer, and here we are, almost 40 years later.
So Mike Tenay had a what do you call it?
Like an article, I
yeah,
guess, right?
He had his own newsletter. In 66, and he would print it at the offices of the wrestling promotion in Los Angeles because he knew everybody there. And he was he would have been 11 years old when he started the newsletter.
That's crazy. Right. For some reason, I was under the impression you were the first one to have like started.
There was stuff before. I mean, probably since the 50s, maybe earlier, but there was a real big one in the mid 60s. What was the guy's name? Burt Ray. So he would be like the pioneer, and then Mike Tenay and Ron Dobratz were like the key guys after him. And then I came along in like 72. And then I gave it up. And then when wrestling kind of sucked here for a while, it just got boring. And then when we got cable, we started getting Georgia wrestling. So, you know, Ric Flair and Dusty and people like that. So I got really intrigued by wrestling every week. I mean, I was still always a fan, and I always read the magazines, and I always watched it on TV. And when we'd go on vacations, I'd always like get so excited I could see new wrestling and stuff like that. But I really got into it in '79, and by, you know, I started getting the newsletters again. And then after that, it was like, maybe I should just do a newsletter. My friends in college kind of were the ones who pushed me into it. So I started the Observer in '82, and then it kind of was fun for a while, and it kind of took off, and then it got, I'd say, really big. Man, like when I got hired to work for Frank DeFord at the National, that's when it really got big, and then it kind of you know, became my life, and so then it took over my life.
Yeah. Is that when you realize, like, oh, I could do this for a living? Like,
I in '87 I was working for a newspaper in Turlock, California, and I was making a lot more money on the newspaper job, which wasn't much. It was nothing. It was not much money there either, but it was like I had to make a choice, because the Turlock job was like 60 hours a week, and then I'm still doing this newsletter covering wrestling, and it's just driving me crazy, and I'm never sleeping. So it's like I got to choose one or the other, and everyone's just like, well, you got to give up the wrestling. So I, of course, made the dumb choice of saying, you know what, it's like I just like the wrestling more, and
of course.
And
I think that's the decision. Wrestling business across the boards, it's always, you got to give up the wrestling.
Yeah. Nope, nobody wants you to continue wrestling.
No. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, my parents, who were like brilliant, are just going like, okay, just follow the newspaper job and, work around the country, and you'll probably make it because you're really good at this. And so I said, I'm gonna go for it with the Observer.
The words every parent wants to hear.
Right? Yeah. But 2 years later, thanks to I got hired by the National, which was like a sports daily newspaper in the United States. And from that point on, I mean, it actually became like a good living. It's done really well since, I would say, 88, 89. From that point on, it's there's always ups and downs in all those years, but it's been pretty good.
And you get to do something that you love. Like, it's exactly that. Like, you're doing whatever the newspaper job, whatever, we've all gone through it, where it's like, this is okay if I have to do this, but if I can do this.
Just report on wrestling? Are you kidding me?
Great.
I mean, like, if I look back, like all the different experiences I've had all over the world, going to wrestling and meeting people and everything. I mean, it's been like a absolutely fascinating life. I mean, it's like, I probably would have had a decent life doing sports, but I can't imagine it would have been as much fun. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I kind of, really, and been through all these different evolutions of wrestling, especially like the late 90s with the Monday Night War. That was like an insane period. And then watching it kind of go down, which was kind of sad. And then the last couple of years when it's really started picking up again has been, I mean, it's really been fun. And also the other thing too is the evolution of the wrestlers themselves. I mean, you got to remember, I mean, and you guys have been around long enough to know, as far as like the people who were in the wrestling business 20 years ago, as compared to the people who are in the wrestling business today, it's just a different world. And for the most, I mean, there's good and bad in both, you can make the arguments, but I think for the most part now is healthier. You know what I mean? I mean, the drug stuff isn't there, and we don't have people dropping dead left and right, except for people in their 80s, and that's just normal life.
Just life.
It's completely cleaned up.
Oh,
I mean, I haven't seen anything like,
for being around,
like all those stories that are almost like, we tell them now is like when you're making fun of, like, as a parody, you know what I mean?
They're mythological,
like,
almost, because it is just exactly that. Like, it's such a complete, and we have all these relationships with these guys who have gone through it. Like, most recently with like Terry Taylor, for example, we tell us these stories, and it's just like, I can't believe you survived going through these things. Like,
and that travel that they did at certain points, the early the 80s WWF Travel. I mean, I just remember like when the guys would come into town, and the ones who I knew, like, it would be, they'd been on the road like 28, 29 straight days, crisscrossing the country. And I would see them, and they had that blank look in their eyes. And it was like, oh my God. It's like, it was huge. It was huge at the time, and the crowds were big, but it was just, the travel was just a killer. And now it's, I mean, now it's almost to the other end where I wish guys would have more time in the ring. Before it was just like, God, save these guys. You know, this travel is insane.
What made them run it that way though? Like why? Like would they be in New York and then LA the next night?
They treated people like cattle. You know what it was? It was because they were new and nobody really knew. Like Vince just went national.
I guess it's the
and they would just you know, they would book arenas. They would book all the major arenas on the nights they could get the arenas, you know, because they had to work around all the pro sports and everything like that. They were low on the totem pole a lot of times.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, you would be in Miami and then Seattle and then New York and then San Diego. And it's just like, you know, different time zones and trying to get up. And just the travel schedule was just killing these guys. And that's all. It ends up like when we look back and, you know, a lot of people have real fond memories of the product, and there was some great booking and great stories and everything, but man, the human toll was horrendous. Yeah. And then finally, God, what would it be like in the 90s, I think they just kind of figured, you know what, it's a lot better to do 4 days a week and fly into San Francisco and work San Francisco and San Jose and Sacramento and Stockton, or something like that, where you're in the same area and you're just driving from town to town with
have a little hub. How did it take them that long to figure it out?
Yeah,
like baseball figured it out.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, it was just like I think it was just all of the issues. You know, I mean, there were so many problems, and then you know, I mean, when I looked, I mean, because I remember like in the early '90s, like with all the problems, I was going like, this is, you know, the human cost here is so bad, and then and I thought like the drug issue was so entrenched. I thought it would never clean up. Even when Vince was going, we're going to clean it up. We're going to clean it up. And I thought, you know, I think he's going to try, but I just thought it was so entrenched. And then finally, I mean, I guess it was like the new generation who grew up idolizing the old generation. It's like, oh my God, look at what happened to the old generation. We don't want to be that. And, you know, I mean, like, because I remember guys going like, you can't do wrestling without drugs. You can't do wrestling without drugs. And like, here we are, we've got great wrestling, and the guys also, you know, the in-ring stuff is so great now. I mean, it just kind of blows me away.
It's another level.
It's insanity. What, like, when you get those really upper echelon people, like,
the top
that
of the
can
top,
do these things, and you're just like, every time I see like just Pac do a red arrow, I'm just like, I don't, my mind doesn't understand the physics of it.
So let me ask you, what made people say you can't do wrestling without drugs? Was that just the travel schedule?
I just thought it was the crutch that the guys used because they were always doing drugs, you know, because I mean, the guys would always tell me that, but so the one guy who would always argue it was Lance Storm, because he said, I can do this with no drugs, and he would do it with no drugs. And I'm sure there were others. But, you know, I mean, there was the peer group pressure was pretty bad too, you know, when you're there. Cause I mean, I had friends that would do like, you know, started out and then went to WWF, and were not drinkers. And I mean, they were like treated so bad with the ribbing from the veterans and everything. And it was just kind of like, you know, it's like, you know, if you don't want to drink, don't like just freaking rib guys to where they want to quit the whole business, you know? I mean, so that, you know, thank God that era is over.
Well, yeah, and you got a group of renegades. Like, it's the circus. Like, it's gonna be something.
Especially once you turn into like, now it's like television stuff, corporate America, all of that kind of.
Oh yeah,
like there was
the second it became a publicly traded company, kind of forced to clean up.
I've always wondered this question, and this would be a great group to ask this. Going back to the Monday Night Wars, do you think that it would have ended up differently if we were in today's world of technology in terms of social media? So, for instance, the NWO, when it was owned by WCW, could that have taken off in such a different degree? And, you know, could it have ended up differently if we were using?
I think it would have taken off just because of the nature of just a lot of things that fell together. But if it was around now, WCW wouldn't have gone out of business because they would have been paid for those ratings, and you know, it would have overcome. You know, they had so many losses. Maybe it wouldn't have overcome their losses now that I think about it. But you know who would have survived was Paul, because Paul's losses were, you know, a couple of million a year. And if he was getting, you know, let's just say $5 million a year, which is peanuts today for television rights, he'd have been fine forever, you know, and he'd have been like what TNA was. And, but, you know, not with the stupidity that TNA went through, because he knows the business. So Paul would have survived in today's environment and not been considered like a creative genius, but a business idiot, because his business actually would have worked had he been able to get money, because he's had to spend money for television and make it up on doing shows and selling merchandise. And it didn't work. today, if you don't have to spend money to buy TV time and they give it to you and you're on national TV and you're getting paid, he'd have survived. He'd have survived and he'd been a rich guy now. Well, I'm sure he's a rich guy now anyway.
Isn't it crazy that wrestling had that giant boom, and then in a matter of 2 months, both of those companies are gone, right?
Yeah.
ECW, WCW.
Yeah.
But it was building to that for like the last 2 years.
Sure.
But the decline of WCW was so fast. I mean, I remember just weekly watching that thing go down, and it was really sad because, you know, WCW really was the forerunner in a lot of ways because they brought in the international stars and you got the new style. WWF was always doing the same type of thing. And I thought they were kind of getting caught with their pants down by the new styles coming in and the smaller guys and stuff that they just couldn't really comprehend. But then WCW went and self-destructed. And then Vince, through luck, skill, whatever, you know, you get Steve Austin and The Rock at the same time and Triple H and Foley and all those guys, that era. You know, that era just had the most charismatic guys, like the most charismatic guys as a group ever. Like there've been, you know, Hulk Hogan and Bruno Sammartino and these guys were all charismatic guys, but I don't think you ever had as many in their prime at the same time as that late, you know, 1990s.
You go back and watch a pay-per-view from like 2002.
Yeah, that
and
early
the
2000s,
undercard is just unbelievable.
It's
You got
ridiculous.
Eddie and Benoit and Jericho. It's insane.
Well, now you're talking talent too. You know, it's like there was the I think that the 90s cultivated a lot of talent because it was the end. Like the guys had so many of those guys had worked regularly in Japan and Mexico and Europe and in different territories in the United States. So they got a wide variety of styles. And they grew up on the 80s wrestling, so they kind of idolized some of those guys that idolized the Dynamite Kid. He was like one of the key guys that, if you really look back on it, or later Shawn Michaels, but Dynamite came first. And you know, the guys who wanted to copy Dynamite Kid, I mean, even though it was very physically tough, they became incredible wrestlers because it was kind of like that craft and like Bret and things like that. So I always noticed like the Canadians, I always thought were the better wrestlers than the Americans because
great answer.
Yeah, good answer, Dave.
Because the American role models were like Hulk Hogan, right?
Yeah.
But the Canadian role models were like Dynamite Kid for the ones who, you know, really knew their wrestling, but the ones who came up later, it was always Bret Hart was like the national hero.
Oh yeah.
And Bret wasn't, you know, just some dude that lifted weights and looked big and could do, you know, was charismatic. Bret was just a guy who, you know, made the meat and potatoes of wrestling look good. And all those Canadians that came after, like your Edge and Christian and all that, I mean, they were, their big role model was really having great matches and telling stories and stuff. So, yeah.
I think Bret gets a bad rap for not having charisma, or even like in the first half of his career. I think he did, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
his promos in 97 cannot be touched. The live promos in 97.
Amazing. The thing with Bret though is that he had to feel it or he couldn't do it. Right. Like if Bret mentally like felt it was real, like in 97 where he really did, he was absolutely incredible. But a couple of years later in WCW, I mean, I could see it in his eyes just going like, this stuff makes no sense. And he couldn't sell the stuff that made no sense. And I mean, I remember, because people always go, Bret took it too seriously. And I go, you realize because he took it too seriously, if he didn't take it seriously, he'd have just been a mid-card guy. Yes. It was because when he spoke, when he was really over and really like the top guy and worked that way where he believed everything. So you believed everything. And it was just, I mean, I you know, a lot of the criticism of Bret to me was always, and even from other wrestlers was like, not understanding that, like, you know, without that, you know, he wasn't going to be that big of a star, except he could take it so seriously from, you know, I guess from his childhood, you know, where he grew up watching it and it was a serious business to him.
Mm-hmm. It had to be.
Because you see that generational shift, right? From you have the Hogan era, which then kind of basically bled into the Bret era. Like, you know, Hogan off the page. Like, and that's what he's pro wrestling as pro wrestling gets. Yeah. And Bret wasn't that, right? At all. He was just solid in the ring.
It felt real.
He was cool.
Mm-hmm.
He was the first one of those
Bret
guys
was cool.
Like,
yeah.
Cool.
He was cool. How do you make Pink cool? He did it, though.
He did it.
He
made it very cool.
I didn't.
We have a really good email from Nick, and it's a question for Dave. And he says, Dave, would you consider this overall the healthiest the wrestling industry has been in decades? And has there ever been anything comparable to this COVID era in this point in the industry?
Oh my God. No, of course, nothing like the COVID era. I mean, up until the COVID era, I think that everything was just going great. And then that year plus really took everything down. So now it's getting better, but it's like this is the most unpredictable because look, we don't even know what's going to happen in like 4 months. So it's going to be back to where it used to be, which we're going to have economically, it's the healthiest it's ever been. Popularity wise, no, it's had, late 90s was obviously a lot more popular and late 80s was more popular and the early 50s was more popular. But people, when they look at TV ratings and go, oh, it's never been less popular. It's like, there's so much more than TV ratings are huge and important, and they're so important, but it only measures like a certain percentage of the fandom. Like when I was a kid, every wrestling fan watched, we didn't get as many hours of TV, but every wrestling fan watched every hour of television because you only had a couple of stations anyway. And now I know fans who are big fans, but they don't necessarily watch every TV show by any means, but they're aware of it. They know who the guys are. They may, so many people, they may YouTube a clip here and there. I always think that like when you look at the live crowd, it kind of tells you where it's at. When the live crowds are dead and when the live crowds are small, then and I've been through every one of those cycles, up and down, up and down. Yeah. Right now, the live crowds are pretty good. They're not all-time records, but they're good. But the people who go, for the most part, they really love it. And so I think it's pretty, economically, it's super healthy. All things considered, popularity-wise, it's good. It could be better. We need, it's like the one thing that we lack is we do lack the Rock, the John Cena, regularly. We, the big stars are big stars, but we don't have that
marquee,
dominant pop culture. We don't have that, and that's those, like Austin. Those are the people that, where you walk around down the street and you're going to see their T-shirts everywhere. We don't have that guy now. If we had like 2 or 3 of those guys, it would probably be the strongest it ever was. But it's hard to make those guys. It's like McGregor in MMA. It's like they just come along, and you can be the greatest promoter in the world and put the rock behind someone, but you can't create a guy like that. You can create a star, but you cannot create a rock. It's like, it's timing and luck and just a level of charisma that can't be taught, I think.
Do you think The Rock happens without Stone Cold?
Not to the same degree. No way. He would have been a big star. He had everything, but Stone Cold brought it up to such a level that when he got there, the level was so high that, but I think he still would have ended up making it in the movies. I think that somebody would have seen him and all that. So I think that happens. But as far as the business that he did, like the, 100 shows with over 10,000 people in a calendar year.
That's insanity.
I've never heard that number before.
No.
Yeah. That wouldn't have happened if Austin hadn't brought the thing up to that level.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Now you kind of you're famous. You broke down the fourth wall in this whole industry, realistically, with the Observer, and definitely with the success of you at the helm of it. What wrestlers, you don't have to give names, but I'm sure there were a lot of wrestlers along the way who maybe weren't very happy, or maybe some were very happy.
Everyone probably.
Yeah, give us some stories. Give us some.
I don't really have like the great stories that people think I have. There were guys who would call me up and like threaten me and stuff, but it wasn't that many. It was kind of unusual for it to happen. But yeah, everyone in the 80s when I started, it was like pretty much. I don't want to say everyone because there were, because I just remember Brody in the locker room would just tell people, it's like, you should be reading this. And Watts, believe it or not, you would think who would have hated me the most and probably did it at later in his life. But he every wrestler that was working for him, he told, they pretty much were all subscribing. So I know he was, it's just hilarious. Like, wow. Yeah. It's like, I think that the guys, okay, this is what I think. I think that the guys who came from sports were more accepting because when they were like college football players or something, they had to deal with sports writers. Whereas the people who were just pure wrestling swerve guys, the old school total swerve guys that just thought it was a big con, they thought like, I'm like revealing the con, and they hated that. That thought that like, that's going to kill the entire business if people realized it. And I never bought that because I always, with my friends, like they didn't think that it was pure sport or real. It is real, but you know what I mean? But they didn't think it was pure sport, and they loved it just as much. But I think that the people in wrestling were, if they find out, the entire wrestling business dies the next day. And then Vince went and basically said it, and the business didn't die at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that was, but the old time guys, they hated Vince too. Even as Vince made it big. I mean, those old time guys were like, he ruined the business, he killed the business.
Well, he swallowed them up, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Big time.
He changed it. You know, but it was going to go, you know, it was going to go that way anyway because of cable TV. There
was also like, and now you had this source of like, so you have the Observer, and now it's like anybody who's anywhere can read about different stories about what's going on somewhere else.
So
it's like,
wouldn't promoters see that as a tool? Like, because you're releasing numbers and things of that nature.
So,
right?
some did. I mean, I thought that the early thing that was good for the wrestlers is like, you know, they would always hear stories, but I usually would get the accurate attendance figures and things like that. And in those days they got paid if the territory was strong or weak. So it was kind of like, and guys went every year to a new place. It wasn't like, so it's kind of like, oh, you know, like the guy in, let's just say Alabama, let's just say the promoter in Alabama, oh, we're having nothing but sellouts, and they read in the Observer. It's like the guys are making $300 a week. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, maybe I'll go to Louisiana instead. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, so that's where I thought it was good for the wrestlers. And also, you know, you know, you kind of learned, you know, what promoters were on their way up and on the way down and things like that. And, you know, and also for young wrestlers, I mean, a lot of guys, like, I would hear about them or recommend them, and they were, you know, I mean, I remember Jeff Jarrett actually was the one who said it, that Jerry Jarrett would see someone and go like, you know, oh, you know, he's doing really good in these independent shows, and he would want to bring him in, you know. So, and it wasn't necessarily a great paying job, but it was the foot in the door. Once you got with Jarrett, you're on real TV, and you're, you know, and if you do well, then it opens the door everywhere for you.
Right. And this is also predates internet, right? Whereas now is just you have all this. Like we were talking about social media earlier.
Right.
And that's where it's like, I think it's a benefit now to the guys working, is that you have instant exposure, right? You have YouTube, you have Twitter, you have all these other things that you can just get out there. Before it was, how do you hear about a guy working in Louisiana?
Yeah. It's much better now. And also, and like, if you're somebody, and also everything's taped, you know, you got to remember back then, like, let's just say you're working all these shows, no one was taping those shows. So nobody saw you. It was just like words on a piece of paper. Like, this guy looked good. You know, now you can just go and push a button, and any wrestler that you want to see, you can see his strengths and weaknesses. So,
that's true.
Yeah. It's so awesome in the sense that, like, it almost blows my mind, because it's like, you know, no matter where, whether it's Mexico or Europe or Japan, we can watch like almost anything. It's like,
instantly,
it's almost like
wherever you want, like that.
Yeah, it's almost like this Sunday they got the Triple Mania in Mexico City, and there's no legal way. I'm sure it'll pop up, but there's no legal way to watch it. And it's kind of like I'm sitting here going like, that's not fair. We should be able to watch everything live.
We're so spoiled.
So
spoiled. Instant gratification right away. I want it now, and we get it. You know?
Yeah.
The boys and I were talking before the show started. There were a couple of questions that we thought were really interesting. So the star rating system that you have. So how did that start?
Okay, so when I started the Observer, there was a newsletter called Weasel's World of Wrestling by a guy named Norm Dooley, who was best friends with Jim Cornette. And Jim Cornette and Norman Dooley started rating matches with stars from you know, like from Leonard Maltin and movies. So it'd be like 0 to 4. And Norman Dooley was hilarious. I mean, he was the guy who really got me, you know, I copied so much from him, because he would just, the lines that he would come up with. I mean, he really loved Memphis wrestling, and then he'd go in other places and it was different. So he would just like make fun of it, and he'd make fun of like the booking when it made no sense in other places, and you know, just, you know, boring matches and things like that. But anyway, so he did the star rating. So when I started, I just copied him, what he did. And that was kind of it. But yeah, it comes from Jim Cornette, who now to this day probably swears and hates the fact that he ever did it, because of you know how he is now, but he was the one who came up with it.
I like that. That's a turn I wasn't expecting right there. Of all people, Jim Cornette to come up, I was not expecting that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that's so funny to me, because I've known Jim Cornette since the early mid 80s, is that Jim Cornette was when he was a kid, you know, he grew up like me and like probably like you guys. He was one of the most progressive people. I mean, he was one of the first guys to get Japanese videotapes and study wrestling all over the world, and he knew everything. And that's why it kind of like breaks my heart to see him, you know, even though some of it's a gimmick, a lot of it's not. I mean, it really isn't. Yeah. And to see like he was the guy ahead of the curve, and now he just is this guy doing whatever he does, which is really sad. It's sad to me, you know, but whatever, you know, it's like,
it's one thing I'll always say with him, whether anybody agrees with what he's saying or disagrees with it. I love listening to him talk because there's always a passion behind it.
And
whether I agree with it or not,
he sticks to his guns.
He does.
He sticks to his guns.
He's a fantastic talker, and he's super entertaining. I mean, that was my favorite podcast until it just got to where I felt it just was unlistenable to me because he just had so much hatred that I thought it just clouded everything. You know, like before, like, you know, he was really good. Certainly in the 80s and 90s, I would listen to him. And I mean, he was the first guy. I remember this, like when Dwayne Johnson had his first match in Texas. And it was like 2 or 3 days later, and he just goes to me and goes, "We got this Dwayne Johnson, Rocky Johnson's son," and just goes, "In 5 years, this guy is going to be the biggest star in wrestling." And the guy had one match. Or two, that's actually, I think he had 2 matches by then. But and he just told me that. Or Edge, I remember when he first saw Adam Copeland, and he just goes, "This guy's going to be one of the top." Like, he was so good at picking guys, and now he's so bad, he's the worst at picking guys. And that's what makes it so sad to me because I mean, it's like I you know, he had very, very few misses for decades, and now that's not the case anymore.
Well, let's focus on the positives in life. The times that he had. I know, Jeff, you had a question that we looked over before. I thought that was a great one.
Yeah, so it was just basically like we're talking, you know, we move over into modern wrestling a little bit. Like, so what are your, I would say, top 3 or something like that, or favorite matches from older era versus new era?
Yeah, like, maybe your favorite matches from every era.
Yeah, even if
it's not, I don't know.
How do you compare
even
them?
If they weren't 5 stars, just something that really stuck out to you.
That resonates with you, like when you were a child.
When I was a child, you know, we were lucky because we grew up with Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson here, who were just incredible. And and the Cow Palace matches and things like that. I mean, the 2 that I remember the most were 1-hour matches. Actually, they were the predecessor of the Iron Man match. It was most falls in an hour, and we had one with Patterson against Stevens, and then we had one with Pat Patterson and Don Morocco. And I just remember going that it was so exhausting. You're just covered with sweat because you're cheering up and down, and they're going up and down, and it was really something. And it was well paced, and they were just great workers. But you know, once you start getting the videotapes, you know, so the 80s era, I mean, I always liked the Japan stuff. You know, Tiger Mask Dynamite Kid was revolutionary and everything like that. That was really big. But all of the Fujinami and Shoshu and the Funks and Sheik and Abdul and the Funks and Brody and Hansen and Jumbo Saruta's singles matches with various guys, or Billy Robinson with Jumbo, Billy Robinson with Inoki. I mean, all of those kind of matches that were legendary in Japan. In the United States, I mean, it was all the Flair matches with like Barry Windham, Kerry Von Erich, Ricky Morton, Magnum. Trying to think who else was the top tier. Ricky Steamboat, of course, probably more than anyone. Yeah. The seeing like the Flair Ricky Steamboat matches in the 80s live was really, really great. And you know, again, like I saw some incredible matches in Japan live that ended up being legendary. And you know, like with the early 90s All Japan, which has its own tragedy because of how hard they worked, and you know, the guys, the bad part was that was the era where if you had a concussion, you worked the next night and you hit each other over the head with chairs and everything. And that ended up, you know, there's a lot of bad stuff that came out of that, and with you know, a lot of human cost. But at the time, watching the matches and watching the crowd and everything like that, it was incredible. I just remember when I would watch like the wrestling here, I always was like detached from the crowd. It was like I felt the crowd, but I was detached in the sense that they reacted a lot more to ring entrances as opposed to the match. But when I would go to Japan, they reacted more to, like, I always felt like I was part of that crowd because they reacted to the match. Like, I wasn't that into, I mean, the musical entrances absolutely revolutionized the business. And when it started, I mean, the old timers were just like, what's this stupidity playing music? And I mean, I knew, you know, and I'm probably like 17 years
Who
old.
started it?
I mean, the first that I would have, you know, it's hard to say, but it was Bad Leroy Brown and Michael Hayes with the Freebirds.
Yeah.
Were the ones the first when the Freebirds got on Georgia television in 1980, and they'd come from Mid-South and they played that music. And Michael Hayes was so cool and such a great talker. And so I think that really changed it. And then everybody afterwards, you know, with Hulk Hogan, with the actually first with Eye of the Tiger in the AWA.
Yeah.
You know, coming from the Rocky movie, and then everybody, you know, jumped on it real quick. But I remember like Lance Russell even told me, because Memphis was one of the first. Memphis was always one of the first in everything. They were always ahead of the time because of Jerry Jarrett, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he would hear from the old timers, "What are you doing playing that music?" And Lance, who was old already then, just goes, "The people love it,"
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like that. And I would hear from the old promoters, and they would just go, "Oh, it's an artificial reaction." And it's like, all I know.
I see that point. Okay.
Because
But it's like it's
instead of the person.
Okay.
But it
You
helps
know,
the
and
whole
it's like-
package.
Yeah.
Come on.
you know, it's like Bruno didn't need it, and it's like, yeah, but you know what? I mean, everything changes, and if it didn't work, it wouldn't have stayed, and it did. And I mean, the music is, I mean, now it's so big, it's such a part of wrestling.
So
Yeah.
I think especially once it started being on, you know, WWF syndicated TV, and everyone just started becoming like, oh, this is pro wrestling.
Yeah, you're conditioned to it.
Yeah.
Right.
If you go to a
But-
show and there's no music, it's like,
yeah,
oh,
what's
this
going
is
on? Yeah,
weird.
what it's.
But the
like
one
going
thing,
to-
the one thing that I thought what made, and I even now, decades later, when I look back, what I think really made a lot of the 80s guys is that, you know, you didn't have the licensing company coming after wrestling. So everybody was out to like whatever the
That's
popular song
true.
was. You know what I mean? So like the original before the WWF entrance music, which was, you know, everyone knows those old songs. But before that, it was an era where everybody was coming out to whatever the popular songs were then. So if I could not listen to an 80s rock station now on a trip. And you know, if I go for an hour, I'm going to hear entrance music of 5 wrestlers from the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
I just saw a clip of Jacques Rougeau coming out to Dirty Laundry.
Probably in Memphis, right? Yeah, I think it was in Memphis when he
He came out with a boombox, like they
course
wouldn't
he did.
play his music, and he just played it himself.
Yeah. The guys who came out with a boombox with the mics.
Yeah,
So primitive.
Yes.
Before they
The wire.
Yeah, Buck Zumhoff with the big boombox and everything. Yeah.
But it's so true how you like, especially so like I that resonates with me because like when we came up and like we started wrestling like early 2000s, and it's everything that was popular music of that time from like the hard rock era. So anything Linkin Park is like, oh, that was this person's entrance music.
yeah. On the
Anytime I hear
indies,
it
on the
now.
indies, yeah. Puddle of Mud was a
Yeah.
big one.
That's
Yeah.
it's so true.
Yeah, that's why I think it's kind of cool with AEW that you know, and that Tony's buying like these songs.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like I think, you know, I won't knock Vince on that one because he created a music, you know, the whole music and it worked and everything like that. But I just remember like in the 80s, like with World Class, with the Von Erichs and Mid-South and everything like that, and Jarrett and everyone with those promoters, it was the fact that the teenagers would listen to the music on the radio, and it would remind them of the top baby faces in the territory. And the top baby faces of the territory kind of weirdly became like rock stars, and they had a penetration further than just the wrestling audience, especially like with teenagers. And that was a big part of that 80s era. That was that I thought was a real big growth era for wrestling.
You don't even think about that, right? Because I think it goes back to, again, now you just have instant gratification whenever you want. But man, you don't even think about that. Like whatever's coming out to a popular song, you heard on the radio.
Same thing with
wrestling.
Same thing with ECW. It's such a huge part.
Well,
right?
ECW did that. Yeah, right. And that and you know, I mean, if you watch ECW on the WWE network,
Well, you can't. It's like,
and we're a fan of ECW when it was, you kind of look and it's just kind of like it's depressing because it's like, this is fake. This is fake ECW. I mean, I always, when I look at it, it's like, I can't, you know, and World Class is the same way. I'll watch those old episodes that I had such fond memories of because I lived in Texas for a year and in the height of their popularity. And I remember just the electricity. And then I'm watching this and it's just like, they're like, you know what I mean? They're ruining my childhood.
There's no soul to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
like it's what it is.
A WrestleMania not too long. I can't remember which one, but Demolition is coming out.
Yeah,
and it's not to the Demolition theme. It's just like this is not right.
I don't even know how they could do that because that was Yeah, that was like classic stuff.
Yeah, it was Jimmy Hart stuff too, you know. So
Yeah.
you figure they'd have it.
I don't know. Sometimes I think they're just messing with us. Just let's see if anybody complains about this. You know?
Yeah, no. And then so a couple. I want to be respectful of your time, Dave. And so a couple questions that I have left. So the first one is with AEW now as the, you know, I don't want to say the main competitor, but you know, doing a phenomenal job of you know, being the main competitor. How do you look at that versus what it was, you know, Monday Night Wars? I mean, how can you compare the two right now? If you're
it's different because you got to remember that WCW walked in with a huge fan base from the Southeast, and you know, it had Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, and they were really big stars that a lot of people knew. So they had a huge advantage, and they'd been on TBS even before Vince was on USA. So it was like they you know, they say, you know, they were always there. You know, at times Vince blew them away. At other times it was competitive. Then the one period where they were actually ahead of Vince for whatever it was, a year and a half or so, 2 years. But it's different. I mean, because AEW started with nothing but, you know, a dream and whatever. And, you know, and I just remember, you know, and then it's funny because I mean, I just remember that when AEW started and everybody was just, this is going to flop. This is going to flop. And these guys they have their 250,000 fans on YouTube and that's it. Nobody else knows who they are. And, you know, yeah, the beginner's luck when they did the first show and sold out, but you know, in reality, they'll never draw 2,500 people after the third month. And I mean, I just heard it over and over and over again, and it turned out to be so untrue. And now at this point, I mean, I find AEW to be an absolutely amazing story in so many ways because of, you know, how, you know, they're way more competitive than they had. You know, the WWE's got more than 10 times the revenue, maybe, you know, 13, 14 times the revenue. And yet it's certainly not 13, 14 times more popular. It's not even double as popular. And that's a real credit to the idea, you know, like, and what I think was with these guys that were in charge, like Tony, is that like, they weren't sitting there going like, I want to be just like Vince, like everybody else was that started. Yeah. It's like, we want to get like 25% of Vince's audience. So we'll be just like Vince. We won't be as good, but we'll be like Vince. And he realized that there was an audience to be serviced that didn't like Vince's product and that liked another product. And he went in, other guys sort of went in that direction, but he went all the way in that direction. And he also lucked into a lot of guys. There were key guys whose contracts were becoming due. You know, it was a real weird time frame. Like if it was a year earlier, I don't think he could have pulled it off. It was a year later, for sure he couldn't have pulled it off, but he got that window at the right time.
Right before the pandemic.
Before. Yeah.
Like
I'll tell you what, if they had not signed that second TV deal right before the pandemic, I mean, I don't know. I've talked to Tony about it many times, and he's never told me like, yeah, our goose was cooked. But he has said many times, you know, like that those tapings in Decatur, Georgia, when they couldn't even run in Florida, you know, he said like, you know, that saved, you know, he has said that saved the company. So I guess that's what it means. I mean, the pandemic is just so funny because they were doing so well, and then the pandemic comes, and it just, you know, Vince did real well with it financially because he had all that TV money. But if Vince didn't have that great TV contract, he'd have been hurt.
Yeah, what do you do? Right? You don't have nobody's coming in.
You have all that TV money plus, you know, 50, 60 years of company equity and product equity. So, you know, it's like Kleenex. Kleenex is facial tissue. It's not actually Kleenex, but no, wrestling's. Yeah. So but what do you do when you're brand new and if everything
and you have to shut down?
And you have to shut down. And I mean, I look and it's like the one company that's been the saddest, or the two that have been the saddest to me are Ring of Honor, which to me of all the companies, I think that they did the most responsible job of like really shutting down and really, I mean, they went with doctors and they really went hard, but it killed them. I mean, now they're trying to rebound. And New Japan, which still has good matches, but it's just not the same because, you know, Japan, it's just like, man, you know, it's like you watch the things and it's like, I still can get into it a lot, but it's wrestling misses a lot when you can't yell and boo, when it's just clap,
when you don't have the people there. Like, I think that's the one thing that we all learned was just how important the audience is.
Yeah.
Do they have people back in Japan or what?
I mean, yeah, they do, but
They're
it's like 50% building. So
Yeah.
you never have that full house, the atmosphere of that full house. You don't have that.
Yeah.
And everyone's got to wear a mask, that's fine, but you're not allowed to cheer and boo. It's like this, so you can only clap. So everyone kind of learned how to clap, but it's not. But I mean, I've seen classic matches there, but it is harder. But I mean, I will say this, and I remember it was actually Tanahashi who did this promo when they were doing the empty arena stuff, and it was just I was in tears and just goes, we never knew how much and everyone in wrestling, I think, kind of learned how, like, before there was always, some of the people in wrestling kind of resented the fans and things like that. And they don't behave exactly the way we want them and blah, blah, blah. But I think everybody learned, it's like wrestling, like UFC without fans, I can watch that anytime. Wrestling without fans, I mean, I can still watch it, but it is tough because, and so much of what you learn to do, and listen, you're kind of watching these guys and women do what they're taught. And some of it with no fans, absolutely, like, double down, right?
There's nothing to feed off of.
You boom, 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 double down. You wait for the reaction. And it's just you double down, and it's quiet. Or
you're supposed to like,
or like, to me, like with no fans, like doing a dive, it's like, it's kind of okay, but it also feels like kind of stupid. Like, it's like, oh, that hurts. Whereas when I watch it with like thousands of people watching it, I never think, oh my God, that hurts. And I think the guys getting the adrenaline don't even feel it that as much. But like, if nobody's there and you're doing this thing and somebody doesn't catch you, and it's just like, and you don't have somebody going crazy, it's kind of like, oh God.
Yeah.
Because everything hurts just a little bit more when it's just that empty thing. And it's like, it's missing that piece.
The
It's
soul.
Like, it's like music without rhythm almost. It's like, you could still do it and it still exists, but to have the whole thing, you need everything together.
But the last 2 months have been awesome. You know what I mean? Where the crowd's hungry for it because they haven't seen it live in so long, and there's a whole new group of guys plus the older guys and everything like that. And the crowd, I mean, it's been, the last 2 months I think have been just, since mid-July, early
last
July.
Night, the energy in the building last night was unbelievable. Like, just
that Britt Baker thing. Oh my God.
To feel it again, like. Just alive, Like
when we did Dynamite 2 weeks ago, like we did it at Daly's place, and that was the first time we've been in front of, obviously at the PC with NXT, we had like a couple hundred people there, maybe 250 at the most, and they're behind plexiglass, so there's still that divide.
Plexiglass.
Still that divide. But then we were in this arena and we're standing in the ring, and when Darby's music hit and him and Sting came out, and there was that roar, I had that feeling of like, oh right.
Yeah,
like I forgot that this is what
feel
this
the
is like.
goosebumps. You really do. It's not a cliche.
Yeah, and some of the younger guys there who only had worked like at the independent level, and then worked a year with no fans. It's kind of like, I don't even know if they really understood what was about to happen. Even veterans who had never been at that level before, and then they come to AEW and they're working maybe in front of a few hundred fans in Daly's place, which is something, but it's like it's what you've done that your whole career. But now all of a sudden it's like thousands of people, and they're hungry, and you're not in the same city and the same fans every week. You're in different cities, and I think that the last 2 months have just been, for the most part, I think they've been great.
How long do you think the energy of the people is going to stay? Like the enthusiasm of the live audience until it tapers off?
I mean, it might taper off a little bit, but the one thing now is when you're going to a city once a year or twice a year, it shouldn't taper off that much. It's like, and a lot depends on just the momentum and everything in the company. I think that with AEW right now, the people who go and the people who know, I think they kind of like, I think that they have this feeling like we were here on the first floor of this thing that's built, and they kind of take pride in it. So I think that that's a pretty good thing. And with WWE, I mean, AEW is the greatest thing that ever happened at WWE. It is the greatest because WWE was so resting on its laurels, and they need that jolt. They need that jolt, and they I think it breathes life into Vince too, even though he would never admit it.
But that's what, like, you have the Monday Night Wars, right? And that's a very glorified period of time, and there's so much in it. But I think like the beauty of it was because it was two people just having to be better. We have to be better this week. Let's see if this works. Let's see if that works.
One pushes the other. Of course.
And when you don't have that, it's the you and you 20-minute match. Whatever.
And you get to do what you want.
Yeah.
You make up all these rules.
Yeah.
And, you know, like.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the weirdest thing? Is like all the convoluted rules of like you can't like I'll watch like WWE. I don't want to be WWE bitch fest, but it's like I know all like these different rules, and it's just like, but I watch everybody else's wrestling, and it's more fun. So why do you have these like rules? You know what I mean? Like it's one thing, like you know, and or the lack of the creativity, and like the promos. It's like that's the one thing. It's like the one thing with the old wrestling that I will say is the promos were better. Yeah. Because the guys had to do promos to sell tickets, so they got really good at it, or they didn't eat, right? Mm-hmm. So it became incumbent on you to learn how to talk. But then in WWE, it's kind of like you know, the promos aren't right, and I just had, you know, and now with AEW, some of those guys ended up being really good promos, and I think that like brought back a lot of wow, yeah, it's like that's part of like the wrestling, the good stuff of the wrestling I grew up with was watching all those promos. So I just feel, and you guys would know it more than anyone because you're creative and you can talk, is that like scripted. I mean, I remember Superstar Billy Graham going like, I could never get over today. I could never get, and he was one of the greatest talkers because he goes, because how could I read a script and how can they script me? You know, because it's just my warped mind that like does all this. And it's like with you guys, it's like if somebody just hands you two guys a script and you have to read these words that you would never say in real life. And you know, it can't be the same.
It's a challenge.
Yeah,
it's a challenge. That's
to
for
finesse it into well, how do I say this? But like, I feel like we can do that because we've been doing this, and that's just such a big part of our act. And it's like we have, everyone looks at like all these great talkers for over the years. Like, so let's just use Ric Flair, right? Of course, great talker, Jake the Snake, whatever. These guys took years of work to get to what you actually see consistently as like this is what their great money promo was. All that stuff in that 5, 4, 6 years to get to that point, you're finding your voice.
So if you're just given a piece of paper, how do you find it? How do you talk from your heart when you're reading off a paper? You know, like
it's impossible. Anyway, like you were saying earlier with Bret, like when he believed in something in those 97 promos, like, oh my God, you deliver it. But then if it's just, all right, well, happy birthday.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff doesn't make sense. So, you know, before we part ways, we were talking earlier on. We wanted to know what is Dave Meltzer's Mount Rushmore of wrestlers.
Oh man, that's so tough because there's so many generations and so
much. So let's break it down in the modern era and then the not so modern era.
Okay.
Modern era.
It's like how do we look at it? If we look at it for like.
So 90s and up. 90s and up for modern.
Okay. For like in ring, it would be completely different from personality. Like personality wise, from 90s up, you know, it's Austin Rock for sure. But in ring, you know, I might say like, you know, I don't know, maybe, you know, maybe Tanahashi or maybe, God, there's so many, Chris Benoit and Bret and Shawn and Omega and, you know, Okada.
Yeah.
And,
it's hard.
There's so many, but I mean, as far as like giant personalities, Austin, Rock, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, probably, you know, maybe, you know, you might throw in Undertaker, you might throw in, Antonio Inoki was larger than life in his culture for sure. I don't know that there's anyone. I mean, in Mexico, the larger than life guys were before my time, like El Santo and Blue Demon. You know, even though I actually saw Blue Demon wrestle live a couple times, but El Santo and Blue Demon and Mil Mosquera, who I saw many times, like those guys, like, you know, I mean, they were just giant in the culture in ways that I don't know that you could be now because the culture just has changed. And I'm sure, you know, Hogan was awfully big, and Bruno and Dusty and people like that, you know, had a great amount of natural, unique charisma. You know, I mean, Bruno was like a real life hero to little kids who grew up in the Northeast in a way that even like Hogan was in a like a fantasy way and kind of like, oh, he's so cool and he had that cool look. But Bruno was more like in your gut where like you live and died. Like if Bruno got wrong, that's why Bruno could draw month after month after month with the same guy, and then the cage match at the end or the death match at the end was going to be the bigger draw of the three, whereas Hogan would draw best with a guy at the first meeting, and then the second and third meeting it would actually go down. So you know, because Hogan was more the spectacle of getting to see Hulk Hogan and getting to see the routine. You want to see the whole routine, and you just want to see it live, and you want to see him do it, and you want to see him vanquish the bad guy. Austin was a completely different thing. Austin was kind of closer to a Bruno, I think, in the sense that it wasn't so much that you like had the childhood hero part of you, but you just thought that he was cool. He was just so cool, and Dwayne as well. But there wasn't as much the reality, like it was a sports contest, as much as just you wanted to see Dwayne do the promo and the people's elbow and just be so cool. And with Austin, you wanted to hear the music,
you want to hear the glass. Yeah.
You want to be a part of it.
What and the whole crowd thing, right? Yeah. With Bruno, I don't think people wanted to. It was the crowd was a big thing, but I don't think you went to see the crowd. I think you went to see Bruno get revenge after being wronged. I mean,
and you also watch his crowd. When you see the crowd on those garden shows, it's like you used to say, like, so we'll say Austin, glass hits, everyone's like, It wasn't necessarly that with Bruno.
It was a rumble.
Yeah,
a rumble.
Where you see
it's something though, because you watch the old footage and you could tell when he comes through the curtain and it just grows and grows and grows.
Right.
And he starts a comeback, and it's the you see people's body language. Yes. There's literally
it's like a living, breathing thing.
Yeah,
the crowd.
Crazy.
Yeah. So amazing. Dusty was like that in a lot of ways. I mean, I saw Dusty in Florida when he first did the turn in '74. I was there that summer, and I had never seen anything like it. I mean, Hogan was like it later, but I'd never seen anything like it. And he would just do little things, but like his matches weren't really that much. It was just like bleed a lot and then the comeback. But the people were just so into the elbow and just the talking. He was the cool, Dusty was really the talking. I think that was the key to Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. Dave, listen, we can't thank you enough for coming on the show. People in the comments have just been saying they could listen to you all night, and I'm sure everybody on multiple rosters will be watching the show back. And
maybe some of them will hate me less.
Yeah. Who knows? But you know what? This has been
Dave, do we still do the hard copy? You still putting out the hard copy?
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. I want it in my hands.
I can't read it on a Kindle.
What am I reading on my phone?
Yeah, come on.
Get out of here.
Never
stop the hard copy.
Never. If we're the only ones who ever still get the hard copy.
And then bring out the typewriter.
I don't know about that. I don't think those things exist anymore. The old school typewriter.
I think it's serendipity that Sting's first match since Ric Flair, when WCW went off, is going to be against these two gentlemen next Wednesday night.
Amazing?
And Dave Meltzer is on the show with us tonight. I think once again, these things write themselves for a very odd reason. So
life is cool.
Yeah, life is cool.
Good luck, you guys. That's
going to be
Dave.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Dave.
Great chat.
Awesome. From the Wrestling Observer, Dave Meltzer, everybody. Thank you very much, Dave. Have a wonderful evening.
Okay, you guys too.
Bye.
That was awesome.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have so many comments. We have so many emails that people want to get in and chit chat with us.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to take a couple of calls and
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep it going.
That was awesome. I got to say, you know what? To Dave's point, maybe a lot of people won't dislike him after that, because I like him, and I like him even more after that interview.
But that's what it is when you're given opinions. Not everyone's going to agree with it. Like, I was just trying. Guys, we've been reading the chat, but we're in a chat. We're having a conversation. So hard. Someone here was talking about to Saucy. Agreed. I respect Dave as well, but he's very biased towards AEW. He gave Nick Gage a higher.
Oh, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, what's wrong with that? Gave Nick Gage.
I think you guys are too.
Very so.
Yeah.
He gave Nick Gage a higher star rating than Hogan versus Rock based off crowd reaction, and it's stuff like that to where there's an opinion there, and you're either going to agree with it, disagree with it. He likes what he likes.
Yeah.
So if he gives a match from New Japan 13 stars,
why are you taking it personally?
Right.
Yeah.
It's
it's one man's opinion. It's all right.
But of all things, it's a guy who's passionate about wrestling. Yeah. Like anybody at the core, he's a wrestling fan, like all of us are, loves professional wrestling, and he just gives an opinion.
That was the great part about it. You saw his passion and his fandom.
You could sit there for hours listening to him talk. He's just like, he loves. I mean, listen, he loves wrestling.
We all do.
Yeah, and just to see you guys, that's the great thing. We talked about this before, you know, for those who are watching right now, over the 115 people live in the chat, before the show started, I chatted with the guy, said, you talk and you ask the questions. They're like, no, Aaron, you go in. And I said, no, this is about two wrestlers talking to a guy who's literally created that fourth wall. And what a beautiful interview you guys had. That was honestly... That was
just a conversation.
Yeah, it's just talking.
That's what we would do
if we were in a car together driving to the next town. That's what it would be. You know what I mean?
And how funny is it that he brings it up? He brings up the fact that Sting hasn't wrestled since that last match in TNT, and he's wrestling you. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it's gonna be something.
That is remarkable.
Wednesday night, gonna slap the bloody paint off his face. It's not even a joke. It's not even a joke.
Comments.
I'm gonna do it.
Well, I'm not gonna get involved in this. Look at some comments here from Nick. Isn't it exact science compared to the ratings across decades? Of course, there are going to be.
It's opinion.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's opinion.
Yeah. And then Brandon writes over here. There's a lot of people coming in. What an interview! Bravo! Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you, buddy.
That was very nice, Brandon. We sent out
opinion. You know what?
Yeah,
that's a great opinion.
Yeah, that's an opinion.
That's an opinion.
How many stars was the interview?
He gave
five claps.
Five claps.
Woohoo! Let's go to Eric, who's joining us on Behind the Show. Eric, get those on your ears. Welcome to everybody.
You probably want to talk to Dave, huh?
Oh no, so I have a very ridiculously specific question for you two.
Okay.
So in Chikara, I was on Ring Crew back in 2013 or something like that. Life goes on, right? But I remember specifically you all taking the tag titles off the Young Bucks.
Yeah.
And the sound guys played your music a little early.
Oh,
I remember this specifically.
I remember that.
And I just remember Bryce completely losing his mind, like just jumping over the ropes, like no,
because it was a near fall. It was a near fall, and the music guy bought it.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't remember because it was the whole gimmick with I don't know, you're still doing it, with the Boston Crab, like putting the crab over hard, and like that wasn't the finish yet or something like that. So it was something else, and then Bryce. After that, it was good, but it was a good crowning moment, of that. That was like right before they shut down.
I think.
But yeah, that's it.
Boston Crab Jericho, though.
Yeah, he's putting more time in on it.
As long as
he
beat the Bucks, that's the most important thing. Right?
I feel like it was like less the move, right, than just like the setup in calling for it, which was amazing.
The whole thing.
But that's just. I always want to mention that because I never get an opportunity to be like, hey, do you remember this minutia that occurred, this one tiny moment of your life that I will never forget?
People can go find it on smartmarkvideo.com. Does that still exist?
We're going to find out.
It's got to be there.
Find out.
Something.
Definitely remember that moment.
Did you enjoy the Meltzer interview?
Oh, yeah. No, I caught a good part of it, and then I was like, oh, sun's going down. I need to get a bike ride in here for a bit.
Good for you. Fitness first.
Go ahead. Fitness first. Keep it
was awesome. I'm sorry to just rush through this. I talk all day at work, so I go nuts. Like towards the end of the day, I'm going insane. But love the matches that you've been doing on AEW. Love the YouTube show. Like, just the jaw jacking with Sting and stuff is amazing.
Yeah, you tune in Wednesday night, TNT. Gonna slap paint off his face. Times now.
Get his ass kicked.
And his son Darby.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe no shade, but maybe you can slap some of the paint up to his hairline because he doesn't like painting. I'm not bald as whatever. I'm bald as shit. But what I'm trying to say is like he doesn't want to paint up to the hairline. He paints halfway in the forehead.
He can do what he wants.
I know.
I don't know. Hey, you know what it is? At least he covers the eyes because sometimes you see the guys. The legends used to wear face paint.
Demolition. You ever see Demolition at a convention?
Oh yeah.
It's just like $3.
Okay.
I understand.
This is the last thing I'll say. I just have to say, King of Trios 2012. I remember Bill Eadie being like, "Hey, is that coffee?" And I was like, "You want it? Do you want it?" Because this is my first show I'm ever doing. Wow. And I'm an idiot right now, but
wait, hold on. You had a coffee for you, and he wanted your coffee.
Yeah, so this is like my first. I started with Chikara in like 2 weeks before 2012 King of Trios, and I'm walking around backstage, and Edie's like, "Hey, is that coffee?" And I'm just like, "Yes, you want it?" Because I don't know. I'm just like, "Take it." I don't know. Like, and he's like, "Oh," and I was like, "All right." Yeah.
Did he take it?
No way. And this is like,
because
this
he
is
likes
like-
it black. You had cream and sugar in there. He wasn't going to take it.
it was a great time, but it was definitely the death throes and the last vestiges of the "I will touch you ever so lightly when we shake hands" bullshit. Like, which was.
Trios 2012. I remember I won a giant double knockout tournament.
Oh yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Huge double knockout
in the backstage. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Oh, okay, yeah, not
the fan
privy.
conclave.
Yeah, the fan conclave.
Eric, thank you so much.
Anyway, yeah, sorry, take up so much time. Anyway,
You're always
y'all have a good one.
Have a good one, buddy. Always welcome on the show. Let's go to another caller. Let's go to Zach. Zach, welcome to Behind the Show.
Hey, about Zach.
I do apologize for the room. It's terrible. It's terrible. Yeah, good guys. How you doing?
Very good. Very good. Was it cold where you are?
Look. It's winter here in Melbourne, so I got like my championship.
Yeah, but it's still not that cold.
Beanie.
Come on.
But they're very sensitive.
Yeah, they're sensitive.
They're very sensitive.
Like
you know,
Brendan Fink over here.
Aussies, you know,
come on.
very sensitive to the cold.
Rhea. I love that. What's going on?
I mean, like, I did listen to the Dave Meltzer conversation. I was jumping in on the chats. I was just going to ask him if I was trying to see if I can rib him. I was going to say to him, like, hey, do you know if Bret Hart still owns that mansion that Mr. Burns bought?
Oh, good Simpsons reference. I like that.
That's good. Simpsons.
See, I was gonna bring up the Eric Bischoff stuff, but you know what? I decided that it's too good of a conversation, and I think it was a very positive conversation. He brought up Cornette, we didn't, so yeah, that
sounds very interesting.
Little heat,
yeah,
little heat.
I'm sure. I wonder if any of the dirt sheets are going to pick this up because Dave doesn't do a lot of interviews like this, right? So it was
maybe
pretty.
The Wrestling Observer will pick it up.
Maybe the Wrestling Observer.
Brian Alvarez will be talking about it. And you know who else was in the stream when we were chatting? We had Simon from What Culture who was on.
Love
that guy. I love him.
I saw kayfabe news.
Yeah, I saw kayfabe news. I've had enough of kayfabe news. If you're listening.
My man, are you a fan of kayfabe news? The answer is no.
No, I listen to Sean Ross Sapp and Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez.
Tell me how bad kayfabe news is.
Yeah, tell us how bad kayfabe.
How bad are they?
I think I lurk on Squared Circle on Reddit, and it's so bad. Like I don't think even he gets a mention.
Exactly. Exactly.
Nobody cares.
Simon
Miller. What's his name on this kayfabe?
Flippin' Marks.
But I do say you boys are very popular on Squared Circle. I mean, like I think half of Reddit don't even know if it's the real Sting. I think it's Jumping Jeff Farmer. Well, I mean you got a taste of it.
We don't know either. We're going to be investigating tomorrow. Actually,
we're going to investigate.
Launching
things out.
We'll see.
No, worst case scenario.
I'll tell you right now, it felt like the real Sting.
Worst case scenario. It felt like it, but worst case scenario. Next time on Dynamite.
Until I see him for the
rafters and
so
bad,
down
the face paint comes off
the real
and he's going to be exposed.
Exactly. Zach?
Man, that is definitely the real.
I was going to say, you have yourself a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And please hit the subscribe button and keep watching these guys and keep supporting us.
No problems. Love you guys.
Zach.
Good stuff.
Enjoy winter.
Good question. I like that Mr. Burns question there. Let's go to Tyler. Tyler, welcome to Behind the Show.
How's it going?
There we go. There he is.
First of all, you guys are doing fantastic. I'm very glad to see you guys doing great. You've been doing awesome stuff for a long time.
Having a blast.
I'll start. Who are your favorites growing up?
I mean, Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
It's so cliche, but there's no way. Look, whoever WWE told me to cheer for as a child, that's who I was going to cheer for.
There certainly
is
that.
Then you grew into Bret Hart, and I've told this story before, but in the summer of 1995, so we're Canadian, obviously, so it's almost like a rite of passage. You have to cheer for Bret Hart. But Shawn Michaels was on the rise, and I remember the WWF magazine. It was his face with Psycho Sid was in his little round glasses. And I started to like Shawn Michaels, I think, more than I liked Bret. And I felt shame in my heart as a Canadian.
Yeah.
Were you at the Survivor Series? I was there.
Yeah, I was at the Survivor Series. Yeah.
Oh,
I missed that out. I moved to British Columbia at the time, so I missed that out. So
I still have my ticket stub.
Of course.
Really? So I saw. So a little fun fact. I did a charity event in London, Ontario, and Bret was there, and we were literally sat down for an hour and we talked about how the fact that I said I was at that event. He's like, oh, it's like being at the grassy knoll where when Kennedy was shot. That's literally what he said. He's like, very not a lot of people were ever there, and now we're talking to someone who's there. Anyways, it was a really interesting conversation. And then he talked to me about Goldberg, and he literally took my hand, okay, and he grabbed my hand and put my hand on his head. And he said, "You see that dent?" He said, "That's where he kicked me." I'm like, first of all, I'm touching Bret Hart's head. I'm like, this is insane. And he's letting me feel the dent on his head. I'm like, wow.
So let's flip the question to you, Tyler. Like, what got you into wrestling? What was your favorite?
Holy crap. So obviously a lot younger than you guys, but my parents.
You taking a shot?
No.
You want a taste? You want to take a swing at me?
Hey, you're on thin ice, man.
Yeah, what's your problem?
I'm sorry. I'll watch it. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. But my family's been really big into wrestling. I have a Opa that I live with that's been watching it since the very beginning, and so since I was 3, I've been watching it. Like my first memories is Mania 23, where Jeff Hardy jumped off the ladder. Which, as a kid, I was a huge Jeff Hardy guy, and I was pissed because he lost. I'm like, get the case. I don't care.
Who won? Kennedy or CM
that was
Punk?
the one Kennedy won. He did the plunge off on Hornswoggle or whatever.
Yeah, with the Lambeau leap, right?
Yeah, I was big into Hardy, Undertaker, because the match with Batista too. That was a really good one. That was a good Mania.
Michael Cena.
Yeah, that was there was a lot of good guys. And then even the one after 24, which I probably remember a little more. And I'll tell you, I hated Edge so much. He did such a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, also, just as a quick thing, you might see the Celtics thing. It's I'm out of Boston, and my dad will get a kick out of it. We live in Boston, but he's a giant Canadiens fan.
All right. Yeah.
So what's funny? The funny thing is, so I'm from Montreal. Big Bruins fan.
Oh,
so how about that?
See, everyone else in the household,
we got to switch.
Yeah, me and him do a podcast for Boston sports and stuff.
Yeah,
plug it. What's your stuff?
Well, ATB show on YouTube and on Instagram too. But we've been doing wrestling stuff too.
Awesome.
All the belts for the thing.
That's different.
Maybe we could find a way to get you on. That'd be awesome.
Hey, man, sure.
Yeah, I'll sing. And great talking to you guys.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, Taylor.
All the best,
Tyler. Appreciate it, man.
Hey. Enjoy the rest of the week, bud.
I will. You too. Man. Good luck next week, guys.
Yeah. Be watching.
I will.
Thanks.
Awesome. That's Taylor from, I'm assuming from Boston.
Wow. That's what he said.
That's what he said.
I don't think he was lying.
Where in Boston is so Jeff, so you were a Bruins fan.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So long story short is, so on my dad's side of the family, a few generations removed, maybe 2 generations of his uncles, maybe his great uncle or something, or his whatever, worked in the Bruins organization. So because of that, it breeds down Bruins fans within the family. So through my whole dad's side, everyone's a Bruins fan, which of course I get indoctrinated into. And it was always just fun. I always enjoyed going as a kid to the games, and we'd wear our Bruins stuff, and you get the heel heat, and it was always fun. So it's kind of maybe that's where that little thing of I always loved professional wrestling. So it was always I get to get booed. It was
Didn't somebody not give you an autograph?
It was Harry Sinden,
the
GM.
Really?
Harry Sinden, the old GM of the Bruins. We would do the thing where, you go and see where the players are coming out, loading up onto the bus. So, we wait there. Again, my dad and I are in matching Bruins stuff. It's names on the back of the jerseys. And this is in the 80s before it was easy. It was stickers on there. And everyone's going by. For some reason, my favorite player was Glenn Wesley.
Yeah.
I have no idea why. I loved Glenn Wesley. So all the players are coming by and I'm getting autographs. I get Ray Borks and it's really cool. But I'm just like,
where's Glenn?
Where's Glenn Wesley? And the little kid in me is super crushed by it. Finally, a last group kind of comes out and I lose my mind. And I feel like at that time, not a lot of people were losing their minds for Glenn Wesley. So he comes over and starts chatting with me, starts signing an autograph. He's like, hey, you know what, kid, come on, walk with me. And he takes me and brings me onto the bus and introduced me to the whole team. Unbelievable. And as I'm walking out, I go to Harrison and I'm like, "Oh, sir, can I have an autograph?" He's like, "Oh, sir, sorry, I don't have time." And he gets on the bus. And then Glenn just says, "Oh, Harry couldn't give the kid an autograph." The whole bus booed him. It was amazing.
Oh.
Amazing.
That's worth the story without getting the autograph right there.
Right?
Wow.
I still have the autograph book. No Harry Sinden.
That is amazing. Let's go to another person calling the show. We got a busy show tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Mateo, welcome to the show.
Mateo, what's up, buddy?
What's going on, bud?
Yeah, I've got a question, and this one will probably make headlines depending on your answer. My question is, if you guys could get one of the recently released people to team with you for one night only, special trios team, who would it be?
Jonah.
Yeah, I would say Jonah. Yeah, the former Bronson Reed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Easy answer.
Easy answer. Thank my dude.
Take care, Mateo. That is that was. I mean, there's a lot that we didn't even get to the news of the week that we usually talk about, but that's
all right.
Yeah. That's an easy answer in my opinion.
Super talented, that guy.
Yeah, you know what? And I think he posted something on Twitter or something the other day, and it was you feel, man, like I feel for these individuals the same way I felt for you when that stuff happens. But listen, think positive the same way that we did when it came to you, and these people are so talented that I believe something great is going to happen to them as well.
Absolutely.
For sure. Just don't quit.
Okay.
You don't quit. The world's big out there. There's a lot of opportunity. It's especially for somebody who's talent always rises. It's inevitable.
Yeah, we got a couple more people that are trying to get into the
bring
show.
them on.
I'm sending them on right
Bring
now.
it on. Next.
This is the busiest right now as we kick in right now. Okay. Tyler just messaged us back again, and he said, "I love talking about hockey and the Heat from a Bruins fan." That's awesome. Yeah, and if you've ever gone to a Habs or Montreal versus Boston match, I mean, game that is just that's a lot of fun to go to. But I have never done that in Boston. I've always wanted to go to a game in Boston.
We're talking very market specific.
Yes, I know, but that the eastern side of things is
I'm
pretty
sure
good.
the Australians watching, I'm loving this.
Yeah.
Love this hockey talk.
Yes, I guess I would say that. So you're staying right now. Are you still in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, we're still in Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Yeah, we got Rampage tomorrow.
Rampage tomorrow. Big debut episode on the TNT. So yeah, we're here
then
for
it's
another day.
what do we do? We fly home Saturday morning.
Yep.
Spend some time with the wife. Maybe the baby comes. Maybe the baby
baby.
doesn't. We leave on Tuesday night out to Houston.
Right on into Houston and take care of business.
Big tornado tag match Wednesday night. Dynamite. TNT 8 p.m.
Are you a little nervous? I mean, this is a big moment.
Not yet, because I don't know, man. This is what we were born to do. This is everything we've ever worked for. Is this moment
right there?
Was it expected? No, but we're ready to go.
Yeah,
we're ready to go.
Yeah. He got starstruck by Sting at first.
Yeah, well, look. Was it the real
happens.
Sting? Was it not the real Sting?
It happens.
I can't believe it. He was right there in my face.
Happens, but
Darby Allin, from behind.
Hey, the second Sting punched me in the face.
It was on.
It's over.
It was on.
It's over.
You're gonna punch us in the face.
I'm gonna punch you in the face.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, really. How was the bump, by the way? The getting that bump from Sting.
That was great
on a steel ramp.
Yeah.
How good could they be?
I'm walking this morning, those Stings. So
I can't
start on Wednesday night.
The retaliation. This is what I'm going to be sitting there geared at.
For a taste.
Sitting there on the couch.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be something.
Let's go to Sydney, who's joining the show. Sydney, welcome.
Oh, no. Wow, this piece of garbage.
How you doing?
What's going
Look
on?
at you guys.
One of the world's most famous managers.
Yeah, former WWF
Aaron, this
Hall of
guy's been
Famer.
Around forever. He's worked with everybody.
Former WWF Hall of Famer.
I worked with your trainer, Edouard Carpentier, and Jacques Rougeau, even Tiger Jackson. I mean, he used to be my butler when he was on the road.
Yeah. They've told us stories about you. They never spoke highly of you.
They never did speak highly of you. Yeah.
All right, I've got 44 questions.
Let's go.
Got them all written down. First off, if you guys were drafting a fantasy league, who would you take in the first round?
What are you talking? What are we talking? Football? What league? Are we...
Football, the only real sport outside of wrestling.
I see what's going on
I'm
here.
drafting Pat Mahomes.
Pat Mahomes, of course. Homer.
All right, let me write that down. All right, Mahomes got
it. What WrestleMania is that? 6, 8?
6. That's the only one that was up in your house there. Well, besides the other one.
if I'm getting the number one pick, okay,
Yeah.
and if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm going with Tim Tebow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Off the board. Off the board with
Listen,
that one.
you can't leave him on there too
No,
long.
no.
He's playing tight end.
He's playing
He's
tight
going to make
end.
big things.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Tim Tebow.
Oh, yeah. You're
Big Jaguars fan.
Big Jaguars
Big
fan.
Jaguars
now. Yeah,
fan.
big Jaguars fan.
Big, you have to be now, right? I mean, it's part of the deal.
Yes. That's right.
Yeah. You know, look, I'm so happy for you guys. I'm so happy, you know, we get to still see you. Next week, you're wrestling Sting. I mean, I wrestled him back in '84 out in California.
You did.
I'm so excited for you.
You guys went 60 minutes.
I just watched it on YouTube the other day.
62 minutes.
I'm sorry. It's regulated 60 minutes, 2 minutes overtime.
He
but
had the
sorry.
tights
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
though. He had the tights.
Tights, he had the hair, he had it all. All right, I got to go to bed.
All right.
All right.
See you, Sydney.
How do I get out?
Everybody go check out Sidney Bacabella, world's greatest professional wrestling manager.
Quite the Twitter. You can look him up.
He got the only person who got kicked out of the whole thing.
Well, you know what are you going to do?
Wow. With merited.
Yeah, this has been I gotta say this has been an awesome show. You know what, we should end it on a high, in my opinion, because there's
how long we go tonight? This was a world record here.
An hour 25.
Wow.
And by the way, just that interview was like pure bliss. I'm literally going to be listening to that interview to hear Meltzer talk with you guys. I mean, that was amazing. It was
fun.
Now we're going to put the invitation out there right now. I don't know, maybe Jim Cornette, maybe a couple of JR coming on the show. I would love to just talk wrestling, just to hear the perspective. I mean, wow. And then question for you guys, when is this? I know there's a podcast that you're going to be coming on very soon. I don't know if you've told anybody, and I'm not going to say it, but I know that there's one coming up soon. Should we be expecting in the next couple of weeks?
We talking the Unrestricted with Tony Schiavone and
with AEW. This should be coming up in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, we're going to be sitting down with Aubrey and
we have to reschedule, but we're
going to be sitting down in a few weeks talking shop with them. And again, another great man. And I know it's we're guests on the show, but let's talk to Tony Schiavone about some wrestling, right? It's great having those things. So we're going to be doing that in the next couple of weeks.
Would love to get Tony Schiavone and Dave Meltzer on the show together. I'm just saying we should just do a panel for one night.
Hey, you got Dave done. Listen, I was skeptical. All days like, I'm not putting out a tweet. I don't know if this is happening or not happening. George LaRock
thousands of people.
George LaRock burned us. I'm not getting burned again.
Well, I'm gonna get him to do a chew for us, so don't worry.
Why don't we chew him?
Chew him out.
Yeah, we'll do multiple chews. It'll be good. And I'll show you the text from George, so he'll come on another date. I promise.
I don't know. He's blackballed. Maybe he's blackballed.
He's got to earn his way back.
He can't come back on.
He's got to bribe us now.
Now he's got to. Well, yeah. I mean, come on. You know what? Yeah, it's you guys versus Sting. 20 odd years later to the date, and now you get the opportunity.
Woo,
so on TNT and TSN, I love
TSN
it.
in Canada,
TSN in
TNT
Canada.
down here.
You watch it. You watch your boys.
Dynamite Wednesday night, 8 p.m.
And help support the show rules. Help support everybody. Go to Pro Wrestling Tees, get a T-shirt, and those are great T-shirts, by the way. Mugs, hats, everything.
Like and subscribe.
By the next, do the thing.
And you know what? By the next time we talk, you could be a dad, and that's going to be probably the biggest show that we're ever going to do.
Yeah.
So you and your wife, Stacey,
defeated Sting and a new father.
We always keep forgetting about Darby. Darby, nothing to sneeze at.
Nothing.
Going to defeat his ass too.
Yeah. Darby's.
Yeah. It's going to be some great stuff. So if you want to be part of the show, and by the way, we've got some really great volunteers. Thank you so much to everybody who emailed us and got in touch. There is a list of people I know I'm going to forget. There's JJ, Dan,
the
I've
crew.
already forgotten.
Mike, Sean, Brett.
There you go. There's a ton of people, and I'm sorry if I forgot. I just didn't write it down, and I really need to write that down.
Yeah.
Or Dan can write a graphic with everybody's name.
There we go.
There you go. Right? Thinking.
A great thank you to the team.
Guys, keeping the glue together.
Yes.
Taking us to the next level.
Back on the road.
Next level.
Amazing.
Chaotic.
This week was a mess.
My goodness.
Didn't expect it, right? Like,
yeah. And we've earned the trust now. We had Meltzer today for almost an hour. Next time we tell you that we're going to have someone on the show, we'll be tweeting it all about it. I promise you. And we'll make you wait for something, something extra special coming up soon, I promise.
Oh, yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Aaron Amadeus. This is the show rules behind the show
2.0.
Matt Lee, Jeff Parker, known as 2.0. Watch TNT Dynamite if you're in the US next week, or if you're in TSN in Canada, it is going to be a Texas Tornado match.
Yep.
It is going to be 2.0 versus Darby Allin and Sting for the first time on TNT television since he faced Ric Flair in the final match of WCW. No pressure, boys.
No big deal.
No pressure. Everyone have yourself a wonderful rest of the week. Be safe. And remember, the show rules, baby.
Rules!